only Jeffrey Marsh, who came all the way up here from New York City on the Amtrak. There was a track fire, there was lots of drama that happened, as it tends to. New York City folks know that you can't trust public transportation, and I think a lot of folks in Albany can also say that. So tonight, Jeffrey Marsh is here to share a little bit about what's going on in the world. For those of you that are not familiar with what they do in the world, Jeffrey Marsh is a social media presence and LGBTQIA+ activist located in New York, as I said before, with over 250 million views on social media. Their message of acceptance and self-love has reached countless people across the world. As the creator of the global hashtag, get ready, hashtag don't say that's so gay, and hashtag no time to hate myself, Jeffrey has earned spots as top Viner lists on both BuzzFeed and Vine with a positive, inclusive message. So yes, please get your phones out and hashtag and selfie with Jeffrey behind you, with all of those things, because that's pretty much what this intro says for you to do, if you'd like. Last year, they were even invited to be on the official red carpet correspondent from MTV and Logo, and has been a GLSEN featured writer in HuffPost and numerous other publications. Jeffrey is amazing. I only met you a couple of hours ago, and we already talked about unicorns and mermaids, and glitter, I think, also happen. And hydration is important. So I think you will love them, and it's with my pleasure to introduce to you Jeffrey Marsh.
Thank you. I'm going to stand on the stairs. Is that all right? Yeah. Is that all right with you? Yeah. Okay. I think I'll just walk back and forth, sauntering. A few years ago, my father apologized for my childhood. I was cleaning my apartment, and my dad called me, and I did something very uncharacteristic that I never do. I saw it was him, and I answered it. And he said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. I'm sorry for how things were when you were a kid. On the phone, he said, I thought other people would judge me because of how you were. I was afraid of what the other parents would think because you were so feminine. And that's why I tried to change you. And are you ready for me? No, wait, not yet. Oh, you guys can't hear that? I can hear it. It's my own voice. You'll hear it in a second. I was thrown off. So my dad said that's why I tried to change you, and I was in total shock. I said, that's okay. You don't have anything to be sorry about, Dad. When parents talk to you like that, it can really change your mind about a lot of things. My parents did the things that typical American parents do when their kids are different. They tried to force me to play sports. They tried to teach me to walk like a man. They refused to buy me girl clothes and girl toys, even though that's all that I asked for. And actually, we can start to empathize with them. My parents sought normalcy for themselves in the role of parents, and normalcy for me in the role of son. And words like parent and son are supposed to tell us something about our relationship and tell us about the path we're supposed to walk together. And that is supposed to give us a profound security in knowing our place in the community. And when your kid doesn't fit their role, it can feel as a parent like you're about to lose your community. And that's the thing about labels. They're supposed to tell you something about who you are, but sometimes they can do more harm than good, and they can be a false panacea. And when I think about labels, I think about all the people like you guys that I interact with online, and all the labels that people have on social media. I've made this career through Vine, through Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, writing books, being on TV, all with this positive, inclusive message, and trying to help people to accept their true identities. And the very best message I ever got was in reference to this Vine. Now. I could be myself. I can predict the future. And you're going to be okay. Thank you. The message I got in reference to that Vine was thanking me for the Vine, and it also said, thank you for giving validity to the ACE and ARROW communities. And I said at the time, you're gonna love this, I said, you are so welcome. And then I was like, Google. ACE for asexual and ARROW for aromantic. In the beginning, I had a learning curve with the nicknames. It seems like people, especially people online today, are obsessed with labels. And if you look at the bios of some of my followers, they identify as genderqueer, gender fluid, non-binary, queer. There seem to be a million ways to say, this is my experience, this is me. And the labels are such a powerful way for people to connect. And in the past few years, we've seen this incredible explosion of labels. And we have seen Facebook add 58 options to describe your gender in the United States. Including two-spirit, agender, trans woman, F to M, intersex, neither, and there's even a custom setting on Facebook. It is so powerful to be able to connect with other people and to find out that you are not alone. And in that way, the internet has become this very safe space on some apps. Very safe space for people to explore multiple versions of themselves and to connect with mentors who really understand what they're going through. The problem might come, though, when you think that finding your right word is the same as being totally true to who you are. It may not be the same thing for you. I get messages every single day from people saying I was feeling suicidal and I decided to stick around because of the videos that we make. They always usually say, if you can be yourself, so can I. And I like to point out to them that sometimes I'm not really sure who myself is. I have been it all. I have called myself a gay man. I have called myself transgender. I have gone by genderqueer, gender fluid, non-binary. I love you too. I even had a straight phase in college. No, I didn't. Totally not true. During the 8 or so months when I thought of myself as transgender, when I was using that word, I thought that I would have sex reassignment surgery. I thought if transgender is my label, then surgery goes with it, and I was 13 years old. It was a bit of a problem because at the time, I felt closer to woman than to man. And I was told by society that there are only two labels, woman and man. I felt closer to woman than to man, and I felt closest of all to Wonder Woman.
You are Wonder Woman!
I pictured going into the doctor's office, I was 13, and saying to the doctor, change my body to look like Wonder Woman. Change my body to look like Linda Carter. Does anyone know who that is? Snaps from adults. Identifying with Linda, identifying with Wonder Woman, and identifying with the label transgender gave me strength when I needed it the most. It gave me something real to cling to. Labels aren't always real, though. Sometimes a label, counterintuitively, can cause other people to hold you up against a norm. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but like, if your label is gay man, people might look for your sensitive, your artistic qualities first. If your label is lesbian, people might look for your toughness. And if your label is asexual, people might assume you're apathetic, that you don't care about anything. Susan Fisk, and it's totally wrong. Susan Fisk is a researcher, and she found out that everybody is bound to be placed on a preconceived spectrum of warmth, whether they're friendly or not, and competence, whether they're smart or not, based on their identity label that they tell other people. She found out that we all tend to stereotype, for example, rich people as being high on competence and low on warmth. And we, as a society, tend to stereotype stay-at-home moms as being low on competence and high on warmth. And there's a researcher, Purdy Bonds, who's a professor at Columbia University, and she did this study in regard to race and found out that society, regardless of their gender or gender identity, will view Black people as aggressive and masculine, and Asian people as passive and feminine. And it goes on and on. It works with gender, too. When you assume that there are only two choices, man and woman, can you then build on that and assume that men are better than women, and the non-binary people are weird and worse than both of us? The survey that was just done by GLSEN, the school climate survey, found that 1 in 10 kids in elementary school were identified by their appearance or their the way they presented themselves as falling outside the gender labels, traditional gender labels and norms. 1 in 10 kids in elementary school. And those kids were almost twice as likely to be bullied at school. And it gets worse when you enter I don't have to tell you. It gets worse when you enter high school. Kids in high school in the United States who were identified as not man and not woman by their peers or their teachers received almost twice as much abuse at school. Gender non-conforming high schoolers in the US received twice as much verbal harassment, twice as much physical harassment, and twice as much physical assault. And I doubt that if they had found the right label, if they had learned to call themselves the right thing, that would have helped them escape the abuse. And I doubt that the answer to violence is about creating even more labels that might feel restrictive to some people. My confidence in loving Wonder Woman and identifying with her didn't help me that same year when I was 13, when my dad tried to teach me to walk like a man. He was offering for my own good, he said. He didn't want the kids to make fun of me or do worse to me at school. And I can still remember the sting of someone so close to me getting me so wrong. And I can remember that it felt like my dad didn't get me. and that my dad didn't want to get me. A label is a really tricky thing because it may not be the same thing as respect deep down, especially for you. I ask people not to label me man or woman and to call me they. I ask people not to use he or she, but to use they as my singular, gender-neutral pronoun. And it's not really a preferred pronoun, which you might hear in certain places. It's my appropriate pronoun. And with the request that people use it out in the world, comes this realization that well-intentioned, loving, good people find it difficult to change their habits around language. Really loving, wonderful, caring people find it really tough to change to they when they talk about me. Does this happen to anybody else in this room? Okay, good. Story time. I was on a podcast not too long ago, and the podcast was LGBTQ. The host of the podcast was part of a community. The whole podcast was about social media and using they as a singular gender-neutral pronoun and how you present yourself on social media. And we talked for over an hour. We talked about how important they is and how I use it, and we practiced together. And at the way end of the podcast, this host said, if you like Jeffrey, you can find him on Twitter. You can find him on Vine. And that was a learning moment for me. What I decided in that moment was, I can't figure out what I'm going to say when I talk to people about using they as my pronoun. I can't figure out what I'm going to say when I tell people that they is the correct pronoun for me, but I can decide how I want to say it. I choose to reach out with kindness. I choose to talk about that subject with empathy. I choose sympathy for other people. Our way out, our way to living freer lives might come from softening up around some of our labels. And I know from my own life that a label can feel like validation. It can feel like finally there is nothing wrong with you once you have that word. But it's a devil's bargain because outside the label, whether you have one or not, before the label, there is nothing wrong with you already. I will say that again. There is nothing wrong with you. It is hard, really, really difficult work to learn to love yourself. And a label can be a poor substitute for that process. It is so important to do the hard work of giving up a cardboard, fake version of yourself and learning to embrace the full flux of what a human being can be. And when people ask me, what label do you use? Do you use a label? What's in your Twitter bio? I say, I'm going with genderqueer right now, because to me, that is the one label that feels closest to no label at all. And then I joke with them and I say, ask me again in 6 months. Because it feels complicated sometimes. Because your view of yourself might change over time, and that is perfectly okay. That is perfectly natural. Don't let a label cut you off from expressing anything that you need to express. Does anyone in this crowd know who Gore Vidal is? It's a real English class reference. You are the only one, and I am in love with you. Oh, never mind. I still love you. Gore Vidal was a writer and did his best to get on people's nerves with his writing. Kind of like me, on the internet. Anyway, Gore Vidal, this public figure, was asked by a reporter, did you lose your virginity to a man or to a woman? And Gore said, I was too polite to ask. That seems right to me. Dignity, yes. Dignity through ambiguity, right? And through my journey, learning to accept my father as a full human being, and having every label under the sun, and learning to accept myself as a full human being, and learning to interact with so many beautiful, wonderful, smart, caring, loving people online that have so many labels, and seeing them all as beautiful humans. That has caused me to dream of a time when we might soften up on some of the labels and start to look at each other face to face. I get it. I know. Labels are important. I use genderqueer. I'm with you. They got political uses. They have personal uses. And I know deep down that I am much bigger than a label. And I know that you are much bigger than one word. So, maybe you play around with it. Maybe you play around with not requiring labels from other people before you get to know them. Maybe you get to know you before you know what you are. Maybe you get to know, love, and respect you, whether you have a label or not. And then maybe you too can learn to have happiness and comfort in a big, messy flux of your life. Thank you. You look so sad. You can stand the whole time. I didn't mean to. I just want you to be comfortable. Okay, just a couple minutes for Q&A, and then we're going to dance our hearts out. So raise your hand. What do you want to know from me? Yes. Yes.
Will you marry me?
Yes. Albany. Because of you. Yeah. Yes.
Can I be the bridesmaid?
Yes. Everyone here is invited. You gotta sit down on my manolas. Yes. Shout it out. It's like a little secret that I heard all you guys before. So I heard what you said before. I thought it was beautiful. You want to know what to do when your parents don't accept you? That's a tough one. What I did was wait 30 years and then talk to them about it. I don't know if you want to do that. The answer always, always, always is do work to learn to love and accept yourself. And that can sound so hard. But actually, as you do it, it becomes easier and easier. And it is so important to do. Do you know why it's important to do? Quiz. Because you are worthy of 100% love and respect. And if they can't deliver it, I'm pointing at your parents, they're on the ceiling. If they can't deliver it, it's going to come from you and these beautiful people around you who love and accept you. Is that right? Okay. What's your name? What's your name?
What?
Say that again.
What?
Gwen?
She's Gwen!
Hey. Is that my future spouse?
That would be your prom date!
Okay, good. You see what I mean, Gwen? And you are not alone, right? You will give love to yourself, but you have support from other people too. And that's important. Practically speaking, find an adult that you trust and that you like and talk to them about it. Right? A counselor at school, someone here from GLSEN, find someone who will listen and respect you. Okay? Yes? He and him. I like your button collection.
One of them says ass foot.
I'm sorry. One of them says, what? Oh, good.
Okay. Did you ever struggle to accept yourself? And if so, how did you do it? Like, how did you finally accept yourself?
Yes, is the answer. As we all do. And it is that process I was talking about of trying on different labels and seeing what fit. And for me, I'm not saying this is anybody else's experience, but I found that a lot of them were restrictive. And I felt like, wow, I'm real soupy. And something like, man, that's really like boxed in to me. So experimenting with all that stuff and learning that that was okay is a big part of it. Huge part of it. And I also lived at a monastery for a while. That helps. Buddhism, yeah. But the thing is, once you start to do that, you can see the best and the beauty in other human beings. And so it's like, I'm going to meet a lot of you, right? We're going to dance, we're going to have fun, we're going to take selfies. I know you want to get to that part. I do too. And that means that when I'm making vines, I will be able to picture you. That's what I do. You, my future spouse. You.
Not me!
That vine that they showed